Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Latte with a Lawyer. My name is Jonathan Brickman. I'm going to be your host today. Today we have John Mahoney, who has his own law firm in Washington, D.C., and he does employment law. And welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on board.
Absolutely. So just to keep with the theme of the show here, what's your favorite morning drink to get you started?
Well, I got myself a cafe latte right here, even though it's not exactly morning anymore, but I'm still drinking it from morning.
Excellent. So you're probably like me. I tend to drink coffee most of the day.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I see that you're a native, well, not a Bostonian, but outside of Boston, Worcester.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to game one of the Red Sox-Orioles series tonight in Baltimore.
Yeah, no, I saw that. Actually, I was missing it because I lived in Bethesda, Maryland for 10 years and in the district. And yeah, whenever the Red Sox would come into Camden Yards, I'd go to the game.
Yeah, I always like to go to the first game of that series annually. So tonight's the night.
There you go. Get yourself, what do they call it? The Boog Powell.
There you go.
Sandwich.
Exactly.
Okay. Right?
Brooks Robinson and Jim Palmer.
There you go. Yeah, no, Worcester actually has didn't they just get the Red Sox farm team as well?
They did, yeah, the Woo Sox.
Sox.
Their season just started recently, like this past week. And I went last year. I took my family to a family reunion there at the Woo Sox Stadium, Polar Park, it's called, and it was really cool. So if you can't see the Red Sox because they're out of town, you can always go see the Woo Sox.
Yeah, no, I was there when they were just getting started. My daughter looked at Clark University before she went to school. I really love. Worcester's done an amazing job sort of reinventing itself.
It really has. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm actually supposed to go tomorrow. My high school is dedicating its new building tomorrow, and also potentially going to the Celtics, game one of the Celtics-Bucks round 2 NBA playoffs in the Garden. In the Garden.
I have to tell you, I'm jealous. I grew up in Malden.
There you go.
And we used to take the train, and I could literally sit on the floor of the Garden as a kid and watch the games.
Yeah,
high school game there as well.
That's pretty cool. I've never played on the parquet.
Oh yeah.
I've seen a few games on the parquet, both in the old Garden and the new Garden. Yeah. So it's exciting. The Celtics are doing quite well this year. Right? Knock on wood, they're going to go.
Yes.
All the way.
They've got a heck of a team.
For number 18.
Yes.
So
all right,
there you
go. It sounds like you're a good Boston sports fan. Right.
Yes, sir. Lifelong. Across the board.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about, what you do now and how you got started.
Sure. So I represent federal government employees in employment law matters worldwide. So I've been doing this practice. This is my 29th year of practice representing federal government employees in employment and labor law, EO, civil rights, security clearance appeals throughout the United States and around the world.
Excellent. Whistleblowers, is that part of it?
Whistleblowers, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, most federal employees are what we call Title V employees. They're employed under Title V of the United States Code. And that, if they're not a probationary employee, if they've made it past their initial probationary period, then they have constitutionally protected due process rights to their continued federal employment that can't be taken away without, due process. So, and Title V includes a list of what we call prohibited personnel practices under 5 U.S.C. 2302B, which includes whistleblower retaliation. That's 2302B8. So yeah, whistleblower retaliation cases are probably a good 20% of what we do in terms of our litigation. Ebbs and flows depending on the administration that's in the White House, what is popular, but some form of litigation is always popular regardless of who's in the White House. So it's a fun practice for sure.
Yeah, no, I would imagine. I mean, it's been pretty active here in the last, well, certainly the previous administration.
Yeah, it kept us busy, that's for sure.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's different, obviously, with whichever party's in the White House, you get different types of cases traditionally.
Yeah,
The Republicans, it's more discipline and whistleblower retaliation. The Democrats are more labor law and EO discrimination cases typically. So it's fun.
and is that pretty consistent over the years, regardless of the personality?
Yeah, generally, I've been doing this since George H.W. Bush was president.
Okay.
And I started in 1992 as a second-year law student, and he was around when I came to DC from Worcester to go to law school at Catholic in 1990. So he was the first president I ever met. So that was pretty neat.
Oh yeah.
And so, it's pretty much changed. It's the same. The Republicans want to reduce the size of government. So you see a lot of reductions in force and disciplinary actions. And, depending on how political the administration is, some retaliation for whistleblowing. And the Democrats tend to be more pro-employee, pro-labor unions.
Yep.
So you see a lot more labor work. And they tend to be more liberal with regard to, enforcing the equal employment opportunity statutes. So you see more EO cases and more, labor law cases. And there's always a fair amount of, security clearance, appeal, litigation. So it's kept me busy for almost 30 years now.
Okay, got it. How many are there a lot of law firms that do the kind of work you do?
There's like a half a dozen, I would say, and I've worked at pretty much all of them over the course of those 30 years. So we started our firm in 2014. I left the last firm I was at, where I was doing the same thing as the partner and the chair of the federal sector employment law practice group, and started my own firm. This is my second firm over that 30-year period. I had my first one from 2003 to 2008. And then sold that firm and basically lived in Hawaii for a year on the beach at Waikiki, which was fun. Nice. And then came back and joined the last firm I was at and stayed there from 2009 until 2014, and then branched out on my own and started my current firm, which is growing rapidly. I just hired my 12th lawyer. So, it's a pretty good size for what we do.
Okay.
And, I foresee we'll just keep growing. So my last firm had a dozen lawyers. This one has a dozen lawyers. So I expect it'll keep growing.
And how many cases do you work on during the year?
We have about 200 clients per year, typically.
Okay.
But now, I just added 2 new lawyers. So probably another 100. So in the 300 range.
Excellent. Typically. So that's a big practice.
Yeah, it's definitely busy. And the good thing about the practice is that because we practice primarily administrative law, we don't necessarily have to be, and against the federal government, we don't have to be licensed in the states in which our clients work for the federal government. So as long as we're licensed in one state, and our office is located in DC, so I've been licensed there since 1994. And so as long as we're licensed there, and that's where our firm office is located, we get to represent people in all 50 states, as well as every country in the world that the United States government has employees, which is pretty much every country in the world.
I see. Okay, interesting.
So it's a very unique niche practice for sure.
Yeah. And I would imagine most firms like yours are in DC?
Yes, most firms like ours are definitely headquartered in DC, as the government is headquartered in DC. So that's where that would make sense. The cabinet level departments are headquartered in DC. So, that's primarily where the business is. Okay.
So how'd you get into this? First of all, tell me about your journey. Like,
so
law school and.
So interesting story. My dad was a machinist for a steel company in Worcester back in the day. He worked there for about 30 years until he was 50 years old. And then his company moved overseas during the Reagan administration. He lost his job after, 30 3 years of blue collar work. And so he had always been an active union official in his company his whole career. And so, I used to play on union ballot boxes that he stored in my basement, jumping on from one to the other. So I learned the labor movement from birth, effectively. And he was a big Jack Kennedy supporter, as many Irish Catholics from Massachusetts were back in those days.
Sure.
And so he used to tell me stories about, in the early 50s when John Kennedy ran for the Senate in Massachusetts. It's like, oh, I remember this skinny kid who was actually older than he was at the time, but skinny kid at City Hall in Worcester, shaking hands, saying, "Hi, I'm Jack Kennedy. I'm running for Senate. Appreciate your vote." So he worked for Kennedy's, presidential campaign, 59-60 timeframe as a young Democrat. And so, he was my hero. My dad was my hero, and Jack Kennedy was my second level hero. So, the interest in civil rights and labor law came from those two heroes of mine. And unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 19. I was a sophomore in college. And, one of the last things he said to me was, you'd probably make a good lawyer. And at the time, I had never thought about it. I was in college as a computer science major. And then I switched to being a business management major. And then I took on a politics minor and a philosophy minor, and just caught the bug, I guess, in my junior year of college. I took a business law class and a constitutional law class at Assumption College in Worcester, where I went. And, the professor who did a lot of the con law and politics classes, Lenny Sorensen, who recently passed away, became my mentor. And so I started the College Law Society, which still exists to this day. And the dean of the undergraduate college had gotten his doctorate from Catholic in DC and said, if you're going to be a lawyer, you should go to law school in DC, because that's where it's at.
Sure.
The seat of the government and the Supreme Court and everything else. So I'd gotten into a couple schools in Massachusetts and Catholic, but his advice, if you're going to be a lawyer, you should go to Washington, DC. I took that to heart and went to Catholic and, got interested in, I had a labor law professor, Roger Hartley, who was kind of the guru of labor law in DC back in the 90s. So I became one of his disciples, and, the rest is history. So the first job I got was in 1992. I was a second year law student looking for a summer job, and a competitor firm, which no longer exists actually, had been advertising a summer law clerk job to do federal employment law. So I applied for that and got the job, and that's how it started. And I've been doing federal employment labor law for 29 years now, 30 years if you count that summer law clerk job. So it's great because, it was hard on my dad to lose his job after 32 years. It ended up killing him ultimately when he was only 55 years old. And so I always wanted to work to try to protect the civil rights and labor law rights and employment law rights of employees, and just fell into the federal employment practice, which is great because, I get to do civil rights employment law, EO discrimination cases, whistleblower retaliation, disciplinary cases, security clearance appeals with a lot of the intelligence community agencies. So I get to walk in the halls of greatness in DC and all around the world. So it's been a fun practice. Been very busy over the years and have done well in it. So
yeah, well, there's been a couple of pretty high profile whistleblower cases. Were you part of those?
Somewhat so. I can't really talk about them too much because most of them are covered by, settlement agreements that are confidential in nature. And I don't want the Justice Department knocking on my door. That would be bad.
No, I figured that, but that's really cool stuff. Very interesting. I mean,
yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. it's kind of I mean, your story is kind of the classic sort of Boston story, I think, in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, real, a blue collar kid growing up in Worcester, which is a blue collar town. Um, you know, Unfortunately, a lot of the manufacturing businesses went out of business
Yeah,
around the same time that my dad lost his job in the mid '80s, and I just kind of fell into, I hadn't even thought about law school. My parent, neither one of my parents went to college, so for me to go to college was kind of a shocking development.
sure, big thing. You
So,
yeah,
so I think my high school, I went to public school in Worcester. I think of the about 250 kids that graduated my senior class, only about 5 of them went to college directly
no kidding.
back in the '80s, mid '80s. So then, I fell into that, and then I fell into law school, and then I fell into federal employment practice, and here I am 30 years later.
It's a great story. It's
Yeah.
funny to tell you a funny thing. Assumption College. I remember as a kid, I was obsessed with basketball, and for some reason they were always on TV. The Assumption College basketball team. I used to watch those games all the
Yep.
time.
Yep. Bob Kelly was a big AC Greyhound basketball player back in the day.
Yeah.
And Holy Cross too, obviously, with Bob Cousy and
Sure.
Tommy
Worcester
Heinsohn.
there's a ton of colleges in Worcester. Most people probably don't know that, but they're
Yeah, there's like 11
Yeah.
colleges and universities in Worcester.
Right.
In the 7 hills of Worcester, there's 11 colleges.
It's a very cool. I really like Worcester. It's really done a really nice job reinventing itself.
It really has.
Yeah, no, it's a cool place. The other thing I liked about it too, and I wish my daughter went there in some ways, there was a direct flight. I live in South Florida now, from Fort Lauderdale into Worcester, which is a great airport to fly
Yeah.
into.
I never really flew in and out of Worcester, even though
It's a great airport.
I lived there. Now I've lived in the DC area longer than I lived in Worcester, actually, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird. So
Where
I
do you
lived
live?
in
Where do you live
DC.
in DC?
I live in Potomac, Maryland,
Okay.
which is right outside of DC. So I've lived here since I was a first year law student. So I've pretty much lived in every area of the metropolitan DC area over the
Yeah,
last 30 years. But now I'm in Potomac, which is a nice town to live in.
very
For
nice. No, you probably don't know. You don't know this, of course, but I lived in the district and I lived in Bethesda for 10 years, so I know the area very well.
Yeah, I lived in Bethesda in a group house with law students, our second and third year of law school, in a White House we used to call Whiteacre, which is like for property class. We law geeks, would
Yeah,
always
sure.
discuss Whiteacre as the imaginary piece of property that you always deal with in property class. So we lived in Whiteacre and had big parties, so our neighbors were never too happy about us. But it was a great experience. I love Bethesda, and
Yeah,
I live pretty much right on the outskirts of it now.
Yeah, no, I can picture it. Driving my kid to basketball out there and down River Road. I mean, I've
I live off
many
the river.
logged many miles through there.
Yeah, I live right off on Avenel, the Avenel,
Oh, you
the
part of the
Players
Avenel
Club
community?
at the Avenel Golf
Oh,
Course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Are you a golfer?
A little bit. I used to play a lot more when I was a student than I have since I've been practicing. But my goal now that I lived on the country club property, is to get back into the golf
Oh, that's
scene,
great. Yeah, that's a nice spot.
as I head toward retirement.
There you
So
go.
we've got a PGA tournament here the first week of May.
Oh, really?
Wells Fargo, blah, blah, blah tournament.
No kidding.
So
No kidding.
we got a half price ticket to go watch the tournaments on the Avenel golf course. So, and I'm sort of investigating whether I'm going to join the country club, which is pretty close, but it's a matter of whether I have enough, I've got a 3-year-old. So whether I'm going to have enough time to really dedicate to playing golf.
Oh, with a 3-year-old, yeah.
I would like to, but I've got a 3-year-old. I've got a wife who takes care of the 3-year-old most of the time. So
Yeah,
getting a free pass to go play 18 holes or whatever, 36 holes a week is probably
that's
wishful
amazing.
thinking at this point, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
I would agree.
Eventually.
Any other kids? You just have one?
I've got 4 kids total.
Yeah, four.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my first is a graduate student at University of Maryland studying history.
Okay.
Wants to be a teacher. My second daughter, Catherine, my first daughter's name is Jessica. My second daughter is Catherine, and she's a journalism major at undergrad at Maryland. She'll be a junior starting next year.
Okay.
And my oldest son is a sophomore in Montgomery County Public School, high school. And then my 3-year-old. So,
Oh, very nice.
yeah, so it's I've got 4 now, maybe get another one, have a basketball team. That's the plan.
That sounds like a good plan. I'm one of 5, and
There you go.
I have 2 kids of my own. My daughter's a sophomore in college, and my son's just about ready to go to college.
Yeah, so my dad was one of 12.
Oh boy.
So in Worcester. And so I've got about 50 first cousins on my dad's side.
See, that's the classic Boston Catholic.
Yeah, so Irish Catholic, 12 kids.
Yes.
Blue collar. I have no idea how they possibly survived. They were born in the Great Depression. My dad was born in 1932, and when FDR became president and saved the country from the Great Depression and saved the world from World War II. And Jack Kennedy came along, and Bobby Kennedy came along, and Martin Luther King came along, and here I am. So I started my firm on the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination in honor of the civil rights work he did. That I have the privilege of enforcing his Civil Rights Act of 1964 every day for a living. So
it's honorable work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I applaud you for that. But it is interesting. I mean, you wonder how people, all my friends I grew up with were, Sullivan and, Sweeney, and they had 8 to 10 kids. It was like, how did that happen? I mean,
yeah, my parents only had 2, myself and my sister, who is one of the counsel attorneys at my firm. So, got to give my sister a job, although she earns it. She definitely earns it. She puts up with me. So that's half the battle.
Yeah.
And so, it's wild, because living in DC and being active in the Democratic Party, I've had the opportunity to work with Senator Ted Kennedy, on passing the Older Worker Benefit Protection Act in the 2000s, early 2000s. So, growing up worshiping Jack Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, and getting to work with Ted Kennedy on a civil rights statute was pretty awesome. Yeah. And so it's a dream come true, I'll tell you.
I noticed that the other Kennedy is on the other side of the aisle as of late.
Yeah, not that's not the family Kennedy. The
right.
One
no, I know it's not directly.
Yeah. John Kennedy is named.
Yes.
So, a Republican named John Kennedy is kind of a shocker.
It is a shocker
to the system, but whatever. That's his name, so he can keep it.
That's right. All right. Well, listen. So, what would be your advice today for somebody who's thinking about a career in law?
Well, if you're passionate about, enforcing people's rights and protecting people's rights, it's a great career. I've definitely had a very successful 30-year, career litigating employment law cases, because it's something that had particular interest to me in terms of my, growing up and in my family history, and, just listening to my dad and reading encyclopedia books about the Kennedys. And one of the more recent stories is that I got to go to breakfast at Sergeant Shriver and Eunice Kennedy's house here in Potomac back in the early 2000s, when their son was running for Congress. So all those pictures of the Kennedy family I used to look at in encyclopedias, the originals were hanging on the wall in the foyer of Mrs. Kennedy's house. And so it was quite an honor for me I just happened to be the first person to arrive to the campaign function. So I got to, have breakfast with Sergeant Shriver, who was ambassador to England and started the Peace Corps, and Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who started the Special Olympics. And so, the sister of President Kennedy. So for me, it was like a pilgrimage.
Oh yeah.
To, the Shriver house down the street. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I got to speak. I got to address the Maryland delegation at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention in 2004, when Kerry was nominated, John Kerry from Massachusetts
Yeah.
was nominated, to be the Democratic candidate for president. Got to take batting practice at Fenway Park, which, as you, I'm sure, can appreciate, was quite a privilege and a pilgrimage. Got to hang out in the dugout and the Players Club for the Red Sox and meet Poppy and a bunch of other players. And it's 2004, and that was the weekend that A-Rod and Veritek got into the brawl at home plate at Fenway, which I take credit for breaking the curse of the Bambino, because I got to go 4 for 4 in batting practice at home plate at Fenway Park with my name and image on the center field big screen. Now batting, John Mahoney.
Really?
So for me, I was with the Maryland delegation. Those people could care less, but for me, it was like, next to seeing God, I think.
Oh yeah.
Take batting practice in Fenway Park.
Oh my God. That's
the year that the Red Sox broke the curse of the Bambino and won their first World Series. So I take full credit for that.
You should take some credit for that.
Although Poppy would probably take issue with that.
Right. Maybe you should let everyone know what the curse of the Bambino is. I'm not sure everybody.
All right. The curse of the Bambino is that the Red Sox traded Babe Ruth, who had won a number of World Series as a pitcher, and, going both ways, like Shohei Ohtani back in 1912, 13, 14, when the Red Sox won their first batch of World Series. And the Red Sox then traded Babe Ruth to the Yankees in 1916 or whatever that was. And since that point, the Red Sox went 84 years without winning another World Series, while Babe and the Yankees went on to win, I don't know how many they've got now, 27, something like that. So, that was the curse of the Bambino that I helped, exorcise in 2004 when I went up there and took batting practice at Fenway Park.
That's great. And yeah, the Red Sox have enjoyed some success since then. So thank you. Now I know who's responsible for it.
There you go. I did do an exorcism before I took my first. I did a little sign of the cross at home plate before I went 4 for 4 in batting practice.
Excellent.
That was an awesome weekend, an awesome week at the DNC.
I bet that must have been a lot of fun.
It was.
That's cool stuff. So let me ask, just to sort of round it off here, because the theme of this is about technology. Do you use any technology in your practice, and what's your view on that?
Sure. So we've been what we call a virtual law firm since the beginning. So we pretty much all work from home most of the time through our technology. We have a remote desktop server. All of our cases are electronic. All of the paper that comes in those cases are scanned and saved in our remote desktop server. So, we couldn't exist without technology. It was funny, as I said at the beginning, I was a computer science major back my freshman year of college, and then became a business management major. And it's funny now that I run a law firm on the internet and, manage that law firm on the internet. And, and it deals with politics and it deals with constitutional law. So the classes I took from freshman year in college until graduation, pretty much, are the basis of my career for the past 30 years, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting. My mother I was a civil engineer. She still thinks I'm going to be a civil engineer.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So most people don't really apply what they learned in college, but that's good that you're able to. You sort of put.
Yeah, it just fell into it. I'm kind of like the Forrest Gump of law practice. Just accidentally fall into the best career ever.
Yeah. I think eventually people sort of find their place in the world. It seems like when you going forward, it's like this crazy path, but when you look backwards, it kind of makes sense, I think.
Yeah, it does all seem to fit nicely into a timeline, and none of it was really intentional on my part.
Right.
I had not even thought about going to law school until my dad said that. It was one of the last things he said to me. I think you'd be a good lawyer. Never thought of it before. I was working in a supermarket as a high school and college kid. Never thought about it until he said it. And then I lost him. And then, the bell, the light bulb went off. Like, wow, maybe he was right.
So
And obviously he
interesting.
was, because
Yeah.
30 years later, here I am.
There you are, doing well,
Yeah.
living in Potomac.
Living the dream.
Living the dream. All right. Well, good. This has been interesting. If somebody wants to reach you and if they could use your services, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah, certainly. They can visit our website, which is www.attorneymahoney, MAHONEY, all spelled out, .com. So attorneymahoney.com, or they can call us at 202-759-7780. And we'd be happy to help them out and help, protect their careers and enhance their careers as federal government employees.
Excellent. Well, good. So thanks again, John Mahoney from John Mahoney's law firm, Attorneys at Law, which says federal employment law. And this is sponsored by EmotionTrac. EmotionTrac is a technology company that uses artificial intelligence that people use to gain insights for mediation and trial work. And thanks again, John, for being with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You bet.